everyone. So really last live for the whole festival, and we're with Megan Nolan.
Hi.
How do you feel to be the last panel? Like, you actually like cap off the festival basically.
It was really fun. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
I like talking about research, and obviously the second novel, Ordinary Human Failings, is much more of a researched one than my debut was, and that was really fun to do. So I was glad to get to talk about that.
Right. Yeah. Did you do a lot of research about Ordinary Human?
I did. Yeah, it was because some of it has to do with the legal system. I wanted to make sure I got all that right, and so I spent quite a long time researching some legal intricacies about children committing crimes, basically. And then I also spent a long time reading about one of the characters in my book. His name's Tom, and he's a tabloid journalist, and I did a lot of research about what it was like for tabloid journalists in the 90s, 80s, 90s. I read a lot of memoirs by a former tabloid journalist about all the immoral things that they had done and all the evil practices they did. And then apart from that, just did some like more general research about my hometown, Waterford, where some of the book is set, because it's set in the 70s and the 50s and goes back in time a little bit, so I wanted to figure out what it was like then. Which just involved
because before being a novelist, you were a journalist. How was that transition?
So I was never like an investigative reporter or anything. I wasn't like I did some reported features in which, like, for instance, one of them was about like consent lessons on campus in a certain university, and that was like a long feature which involved some reporting, but mostly I wrote more like criticism and personal essays. So I didn't do a huge amount of like fact-based reporting in journalism, but obviously all journalism involves curiosity about other people as its like the whole basis. So I think that's like still the instinct that was helpful in this case as well. Was it deliberate to have Tom as a journalist? It was like a world that I've been really fascinated by since I used to work in it, and like I still do some work as a journalist, but I used to work in office and do like temp shifts in a lot of different newspapers in London. And I was never like a big high-flying journalist, but I was kind of fascinated by some of the more famous but also more immoral kinds of tabloid journalists that I would see in these settings, and they weren't anyone that I knew personally, but I was always a little bit fascinated by seeing them in the corridors. So I think that was partly why I was interested in this character. I mentioned this to you yesterday when we met, but Transit has a theme in our collection, and it's called Levels of Life, and we highlight stories about different phases of life, and we really like Ordinary Human Failings because it tells a story about how someone is struggling with their career, which so many people can relate to. I think that's partly, I had a few years after school where I was, quite a few years after school where I was very lost, because I dropped out of university when I went, which was when I was 18, and then obviously I didn't have a good job. I just had like a series of menial jobs, and I couldn't figure out a career or whatever, and that was really hard for my ego, and like it took like maybe 8 years between school and me finding something I actually could do, and it was very isolating to feel like everyone else was on a certain track and I wasn't, and I wouldn't know when to find where I'd find that. I think it's a really lonely feeling to not have a fixed sense of what your job should be. And then is that feeling transformed into the acts of desperation? because I just mentioned it to you before we went live. Somehow the acts of desperation has gained a lot of attraction in Indonesia, and I don't know why, but I think, for example, at Transit, our demographic is women, basically 23 to 28. So I think that fits perfectly to the main character. For sure. I think that, I don't know, it's a very specific time period that acts of desperation encapsulates, and like even if it's not as messy and hard as that is, I think everyone has like a year or a moment of whatever length in their lives where they're completely lost and completely isolated from the rest of their family or their friends or their society or whatever. I don't know. I think you, of course, you continue to have hard times as you get older, but it's never really the same exact flavor of hard as that is. I think like when you're you're just so untethered to your own identity. You know, you haven't figured out your position in the world at all, or who you are, or who you want to be even.
Yeah.
I think like, you know, you can have difficult times in your 30s, 40s, and for the rest of your life, but at least you have like some grounding. And I just think that moment is so specific when you don't have that and you're going through something.
And that's why it resonates with you. Do you know what you want to be by now?
I mean, I want to be a writer, and I'm doing that. So like that was. I mean, it's not the only part of my life or identity or whatever, but I think it has made a big difference to how I respect myself and how I spend my time and how I can feel good about how I spend my time. That's a huge thing for me, I guess, that I have the luck to be able to like do what I want to be doing most of the time. Not always. I have to make money as well, and I have to do some jobs that I don't really want to do. But yeah, I think writing has like solidified all that for me a lot. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Okay. How do you like the festival?
I loved it. It's really, I think, like the best festival I've ever been. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like been a very good, like a really solid program, but really varied. And I think you could just easily be here the whole time and not get bored or like be looking for anything to do. It's like and obviously stunningly beautiful, like really dramatically beautiful. So I had a great time.
Yeah. Do you have anything coming up, like new book? Are you gonna stay in the path of being a novelist?
Yeah.
Or is there
although
short
actually
stories collection coming out?
I'm not. I don't write short stories really. But I'm writing a book of non-fiction. So I don't know whether that will be. I'm working on that, but also working on another novel. So I don't know which will come out first. They'll both be years away. Like they're both just beginning right now.
Right.
But so I think probably most likely a book of non-fiction in the next like 2 or 3 years, and then maybe a novel soon after that.
Right. Yeah. So what do you say to people who has loved the acts of desperation? Why do you think they should read your second book?
I think because even though they're superficially very different, because the plot obviously is a very, and like kind of the genre is different, I think that the thing they have in common is like the psychological concerns of acts of desperation are sort of carried over into the other one, where you know you go really close into these characters and ordinary human failings, and you spend time in their minds in a very, very involved way and try to get to the bottom of their solitude and their sort of alienation from one another within their family. And I try to really like burrow under their actions and see what's going on underneath that, which I guess is like has that in common with Act of Desperation.
Right. Yeah. Okay, that's really great. Thank you so much for doing this. Taking the time for doing this. I hope we can sell more of your books at our store. Thank you so much, Megan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.